The real history behind Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. Welcome back to Real Movie Fans, the channel where we bring you the inside scoop on all things cinema and television. Today, we dive into the captivating world of historical romance as we uncover the real history behind Netflix's hit series Bridgerton and its exciting new spin-off, Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton Story. In 1761, Princess Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz married George III shortly after their first meeting, despite her poor health at the time. Their relationship was affectionate and fruitful until George III's mental illness began to affect him in the late 1780s. The spin-off, titled Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton Story, features a 6-episode limited series with India Amartya as the young queen and Corey Michael Reist as her husband. Golda Rousseval, who played an older Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton, also appears in a parallel storyline set in the 1810s during the Regency period, when Charlotte's son ruled as regent due to his father's mental instability. So grab your popcorn and get ready to embark on a journey through time as we explore the enchanting love story between Queen Charlotte and George III. Black Britons and Bridgerton. The spin-off series Queen Charlotte takes creative liberties with historical accuracy by presenting Queen Charlotte as a black woman, suggesting that her marriage broke down racial barriers in 18th century England. However, it's important to note that most historians dispute the notion that Queen Charlotte was of African descent. In the show, George III's mother, Princess Augusta, bestows titles upon wealthy black families as part of a supposed great experiment aimed at integrating the nobility. While resistance to this integration is depicted, it is not explicitly portrayed as racist, which raises questions about the existing racial dynamics of the time. In reality, racial relations in Georgian England were much more complex than depicted in Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte. Historic England records indicate that approximately 15,000 black individuals lived in the country during the latter half of the 18th century, with the majority working in domestic service as either paid or enslaved servants. Although Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807, slavery remained legal in British colonies until 1833. Furthermore, a practice known as apprenticeship forced newly freed adults to work for years under exploitative conditions until 1838. While the series explores themes of racial equality and inclusion, it is important to recognize that the portrayal of Queen Charlotte's background and the ease of societal integration presented in the show do not align with the historical complexities and challenges faced by black individuals in 18th century England. Historian Marlene Koenig highlights that the time period depicted in Bridgerton did not experience the diversity we understand today. While the show's creators and actors present the inclusion of black characters as a form of escapism, it is important to acknowledge that slavery existed in the show's world and played a significant role in generating wealth. Critic Carolyn Hines argues that race cannot be disregarded in a world shaped by racism and slavery, and the presence of black characters in the background is insufficient to address this reality. The debate over Charlotte's black ancestry. The claim that Queen Charlotte was black originates from the research of historian Mario de Valdes y Cocum, who suggested that she was directly descended from Margarida de Castro y Sousa, a Portuguese noblewoman with connections to Moorish rulers. Valdes argued that Queen Charlotte's portraits displayed African characteristics, which he believed were intentionally softened or concealed by artists of the time. However, other scholars expressed skepticism toward Valdes's theory. Historian Lisa Hilton explains that the term Moorish encompassed diverse individuals within the Moorish Empire, regardless of their race. Additionally, Hilton and other historians contend that the genetic influence from an African ancestor after 500 years would be highly unlikely to manifest visibly in an 18th century princess like Charlotte. Many historians dismiss the suggestion as implausible due to the significant generational gap between Charlotte and her presumed African forebear. Although Queen Charlotte was likely not black, it is important to recognize that the aristocracy of the time was not exclusively white. Dido Elizabeth Bell, born in 1761, was the daughter of a Royal Navy captain and an enslaved woman. Raised by her great-uncle, the Earl of Mansfield, in his opulent London estate, Bell was considered Britain's first black aristocrat. Despite being treated as a member of the family, there were still instances of social distinction, such as when she did not dine with the household during a visit from Massachusetts Governor Thomas Hutchinson. Similarly, in the late 1840s, Queen Victoria became the godmother of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, a young girl from a prominent Yoruba family. Bonetta was enslaved after her tribe's defeat by King Gezo of Dahomey, and upon her arrival in England, Victoria took her under her protection, providing education and support throughout her life. These examples highlight the presence of individuals of non-white backgrounds within the aristocracy of the time. George and Charlotte's relationship. Born on May 19, 1744, Charlotte was the youngest daughter of the Duke of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, northern Germany. At the age of 17, she was chosen by 22-year-old King George III of England from a selection of eligible Protestant ladies to be his queen and produce an heir. Despite not conforming to conventional beauty standards, Charlotte was described as having a lively yet balanced temperament. Charlotte arrived in England on September 8, 1961, and married George on the same night, only 6 hours after her arrival. Shortly after, the couple had a joint coronation that lasted so long that some attendees began eating during the sermon. Within a year of their marriage, Charlotte gave birth to their first child, the future George IV. They went on to have a total of 15 children, with 13 surviving into adulthood. While their marriage was primarily driven by political considerations rather than love, Charlotte and George held each other in high regard. In a letter to her husband in 1778, the Queen expressed her deep affection for him. "You will have the benefit by your voyages to put spirit in every body, to be more known by the world, and if possible more beloved by the people in general. That must be the case, but not equal to the love of her who subscribes herself your very affectionate friend and wife, Charlotte." The royal couple shared a mutual love for music, often engaging in duets together. Charlotte would skillfully play the harpsichord, while George played the flute. While they preferred a simple and an informal life within their private quarters, the court they presided over, as depicted in Bridgerton, emanated a glamorous and fashionable atmosphere. In 1788, George experienced his first significant episode of mental illness. He endured both physical pain and mental distress, characterized by excessive talkativeness that led to foaming at the mouth. Struggling to sleep, he made inappropriate accusations of adultery against his wife and engaged in improper behavior towards her attendants. At one point, George even physically assaulted his eldest son, George, Prince of Wales. The sudden decline in George's health left doctors perplexed. While historians in the 1960s attributed his behavior to a genetic blood disorder known as porphyria, more recent analysis suggests he may have had bipolar disorder. The king was treated by physician Francis Willis, who employed a combination of coercive measures and more compassionate approaches. Although it is likely that George recovered within a few months despite the treatment, which included leeching and cold baths, according to historic royal palaces. George's illness had a profound impact on his wife and children as well. Fanny Burney, a novelist and court attendant, documented in her diary the repeated questions of Charlotte, who asked, "What will become of me?" Burney noted that her words were filled with despair and implied a multitude of fears. By 1789, the stress had turned Charlotte's hair white. She clashed with Prince George when he sought to be appointed regent in place of his father, but they eventually reconciled in 1791, by which time the king had recovered. However, George's recovery was not permanent. He continued to experience periodic bouts of mental illness, and in 1811, his son assumed control of the kingdom, serving as regent for the next 9 years. During this regency period, Charlotte took on the role of court presider in place of her estranged daughter-in-law, Caroline of Brunswick. She faithfully cared for the king, but always made sure not to be alone with him. As Curzon writes, Charlotte witnessed his fading away until he no longer recognized her. The queen passed away from pneumonia in 1818 at the age of 74, preceding her husband by 2 years. They were laid to rest near each other in the royal vault at Windsor Castle. Reflecting on Charlotte's loss, the wife of Philip Lybe Boyce, who had observed the couple's coronation procession in 1761, expressed, "Her Majesty deserves the utmost sympathy, as no couple had ever been happier than they were before this unimaginable tragedy." Thank you for tuning in to Real Movie Fans. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this captivating new spin-off. Until next time, stay tuned for more captivating stories from the world of cinema and television.